Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for Monday, June 5th at 7 o'clock. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone move adoption of the agenda? Moved, seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Councillor Ma, I'd ask you to, if you'd be willing to read our land acknowledgement at the front end of the meeting.
I would be honored to. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands, waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Ma. We have two sets of minutes that have been circulated with the agenda package. Are there any errors or omissions from the May 1st regular meeting of council or for the May 8th special meeting of council? Hearing none, will someone please move adoption? Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Hanson. I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. The next item up for discussion tonight, we do have a period of time at the front end of every regular meeting of council for public input. This is an opportunity for up to 30 minutes for people to come and raise issues of import to them, to the council. And each speaker gets 3 minutes in their presentation. We have two speakers that have signed up to speak in advance of the meeting. But once they've completed, then I will check around to see if anybody else would like to add their comments at that time. I will note that this meeting is being held in a hybrid fashion, which means members of the public, staff, and council are all able to participate in the meeting either in person or virtually, and you may see people pop up on the cameras from time to time. At this point, I'm going to go to the speakers list that was established ahead of time by the clerk's department. And so I have Jason Hyun. Jason here. Welcome, Jason. Come on right up. I'm going to get you to... You're both welcome to come or whatever you'd like. Okay, whatever you're comfortable with. But I need you to come right down to this desk so that we can make sure the microphones can pick you up.
Hello. Okay.
Hi.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thank you for giving me opportunity to speak today. Yeah. So I'm writing this letter on behalf of my staff and my regular client at Lynn Nail Spa. At Lynn Valley Center tenant who are opposing the proposal's new nail salon at the unit 143-1233 Lynn Valley Road, North Vancouver. The reason for opposing the new nail salons include the following. The new nail salon is too close to our nail salon. It's less than 100 meters. Also, there are another two nail salons existing as Lulu Salon and another one is Pamper Nail Salon. So there are already 3 existing nail salons in the same block. With the proposed new large nail salons at 2,250 square feet, nail salon will create a huge competition for all the existing nail salons which have served the local community in the past few years. Our regular clients are opposing the new nail salons as it creates unnecessary competition and it may put the existing nail salon out of business. The underside below show the support for opposition of the proposed new nail salon as Unit 143-1233 Lynn Valley Road, North Vancouver. Over the past few years, we have been struggling through COVID, and now our business is slowly recovering. All of us at Lynn Nail Spa are very thankful and that we are getting back on track. However, with this new nail salon, a big scale, it will affect our nail salons and the job for all employees. We have 25 people are employees at Lynn Nail Spa, rely on the income for this nail salon to support our families. So we clearly understand with business is competition. However, the last 3 years, we have tried so hard to survive during COVID. We have so many clients who are satisfied and happy with our service. It shows that we have done well and we deserve to be protected. We really cannot face another restaurant in this sensitive time. We really appreciate your time and your consideration in this into this matter. We really hope District of North Vancouver Councilor will support us and please help us and protect our business. We have met and agreed on supporting Lin Nail Spa. We would like you to look into this matter and see if there is anything that Councilor can do to help us to serve our small business. We also have the signature below from our customer, employees, and tenant in the nail center to oppose the new nail salon.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
May I ask, just because we can't see that list, if you want to leave your copy in the black tray, just on the table there, we'll copy it and send it around to the council so that we can see your petition as well. And so I got that the other nail salons at 1233, where is your nail salon?
Yeah, another one is 143, 1233 Lynn Valley Road.
Where's yours?
The unit is 143, and our nail salon is Lynn Nail Spa. Yeah, Lynn Nail Spa inside the mall, inside the Lynn Valley Center.
Okay. In Nourish, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So you put it in the tray? We'll copy it and make sure it goes to council.
Thank you so much for
Thank
giving
you.
me opportunity.
Did you want to add your comments as well? You're signed up as well? Okay. Yes, if you'd like to. Okay.
Sorry, I signed up at 4 minutes after 3.
No, that's okay.
I was late. My name is David Houston. I am the unofficial mayor of Lynn Valley Mall.
Fantastic.
Most of you can testify to. So I have a couple of things. One is this. The proposed patio. So far, totally against it. They just put a whole lot of beautiful poplar trees out in front of there. They all come down, if you, according to whatever this diagram is, those trees are gone. I don't know how much Bose has spent on them. I know he's got lots of money, but it's really pretty, and we're gonna lose half that lovely plaza out there, which they fought for years and was part of the development permit application. So I'm very much against that. They apparently they're allowed 20 seats and they have applied for 50. So 20 is okay, 50 no. The other concern I have, and this may not be any of your guys' business, there's no door into the mall. It's only outside access, which as a tenant in the mall doesn't help me at all, and that's Bose's thing, but hopefully you guys can sort of say something. Anyhow, second thing, I also, with Vicky and stuff, the other nail salon, which went in, is going where Nourish Foods used to be. We need some more diversification in our mall area. Like, we don't need another nail salon. We need a hardware store. We need a shoe store. We need a clothing store. We need something to keep, it's supposed to be town center. Town center is not just, I'm in the cell phone business, so I know there's 3 cell phone stores in the mall. I'm sorry, you know who I am. We need some more stuff for the community. I don't want to go to Capilano Mall. I don't want to go into the city to get stuff. I want to stay in my neighborhood, in my district. So I'm very much against this new nail salon. There's got to be something else that can go in it that'll be much more beneficial. Like Rennie, the real estate guys, there's never anybody in there. It's just an empty store. It's dark. The lights are turned off. It's not helping anybody, all that stuff. Finally, my last thing is bay number 3 of the buses. They have bay number 1 and bay number 2 are on 27th Avenue behind the mall. Bay number 3 is treated like it doesn't exist. I don't know if it's the city, but some kids took the seats, the benches, they were wrought iron, screwed into the concrete. They're in Hastings Creek. They've been there for almost 6 months. They've done nothing. It needs a shelter there. There's a lot of people that use that bus station, and it rains in Lynn Valley every so often, as you know. It'd be really nice to have a shelter there or somewhere to sit down while you, because the buses only come once every half hour, which is pathetic to start with. You want people to get off. We're trying to do all this development. is just gonna bring more people and we don't have the facilities to transport them around. And you all know that because you all must live here. So you've probably been to the mall. Anyhow, that's all I have to say. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Counsel?
I will say that the property manager, so the council can set the general uses for a property through our zoning. But the council doesn't have direct control over selecting the businesses that go into particular properties.
Even
Even
it's your property, the one we're talking
That's
about.
correct. though.
Yeah.
We have to operate at arm's length through a company called Warrington. And so Warrington decides what gets to go in there within the zoning that the municipality generally sets. And so it's not me or the
Oh, I know,
council
blaming
members
you guys,
specifically
no.
picking what goes in.
But I'd
that
like you to
space.
look at it and see
Yeah.
if there's some other vital, I'm gonna say, we have too many cell phone stores in our mall. We don't need 4 nail salons within a block. We've got 3 hair salons. It's like. we
Everybody
need
in Lynn
s-
Valley has to eat pizza. I get it.
Yeah,
I
we
get
need
exactly
stuff.
what you're
We-
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
It's,
thank you.
We want to see more variety as well, but it's just very hard to use the tools that we have at our disposal to pick a business.
And
for
Lisa,
it.
we
So,
love you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mayor Little, I would just say though that maybe council does need to have a conversation going forward about the state of business right now in the community and on the North Shore. Everywhere. I mean, the state of business is very precarious. We've heard of a number of businesses, long-term businesses in the district that are closing because of high lease rates, because they just can't do this anymore. So we are in a different world. It's not just about competitorship anymore. It's not about competition being able to churn out
That's fair.
more people. It's about a lot more than that, survivability. So maybe we can set up a meeting to
We
talk
have
about that.
we have a new position that was hired in the fall last year. Neonella Lilova has been working with our business community in the Chamber of Commerce to try to understand what's going on in the community. It'd probably be appropriate timing to get an update from Neonella Lilova. Councillor Back, did you just have a quick comment? We are in public input, but
Just
yeah.
responding because my colleague was speaking. With regards to Lynn Valley Village, I understand that we do have to operate at an arm's length. But I have asked several times actually to have a council workshop specific to Lynn Valley Village, because you're quite right, Mike, we do own that property. So I think there are opportunities to look at the future of it, the mix, understanding that we can only work within the zoning, but I think it's such an important piece there that we should look at the different business types of businesses that are going in there.
We certainly have the ability to send a letter to Warrington saying that we would like to see them consider a variety of businesses. I think that's fair ball. Okay, would any other members of the public like to address the council meeting? And just let me make sure I can see the virtual hands as well. Okay, I see no virtual hands. I see no hands here in the office or in the chamber. All right, so we're going to carry on with the rest of the meeting. You bet. The next item up for discussion this evening, we're on to item 8. This is reports from council or staff. Sorry, delegation. Here, how about that? Yes, we have delegation 5.1. This is Awesome Homes for People with Special Needs presentation. Welcome, come on up. And so while they're getting prepared, I was just going to describe the difference. So when we have public input, that's a period of up to 3 minutes to speak. For nonprofit organizations within our community, we create an opportunity called the delegation. This is for up to 5 minutes to speak. And it also provides an opportunity for council to do a bit of Q&A back and forth with the delegates that are here this evening. And so I want to welcome you all. It'd be great to start with an introduction of your delegation, and then you have 5 minutes to present, and then council can do a little bit of Q&A afterwards.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We do have there we go. Excellent. All right, are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for meeting with us. Can you hear me? Thank you again, Mayor and Council, for meeting with us this evening. I'm Leanne Sexton. I'm the Vice Chair of Awesome Homes for People with Special Needs Society. With me this evening is Erin Campbell, one of our members, and Karen Burkout, our chair. We also have some members in the audience. Okay. So we established our society in early 2020. We're a group of North Vancouver families working together to find and provide appropriate, affordable, and sustainable housing on the North Shore for young adults with cognitive disabilities, or you want to call them special needs, or people who identify as neurodivergent and grew up here on the North Shore. Our young adults, our family members, and all the young adults that we're advocating for have diverse developmental disabilities, but they also have diverse and wonderful abilities. And they all need affordable, appropriate housing in the communities they grew up in to maximize their quality of life and still be contributing members of their community. They want to be a community, essentially within a community. Some might need full 24-hour support, and others might be in need of be able to live semi-independently, but ultimately their long-term well-being is in part dependent on them being able to leave our homes for their next home on the North Shore. So why are we here today? Well, we had a very helpful meeting in the spring with Jordan Back and Catherine Pope. Thank you for that. And they recommended that we introduce ourselves to you so that we can start and continue an ongoing dialogue. We want to be on your radar to help bring the right people and organizations together so that there's a clear and timely path for including affordable and inclusive housing within planned and future housing developments on the North Shore, not only for our families, but also for other families with young adults with special needs who can't advocate for themselves.
So with regard to our real motivation, I'll start with a little bit of an anecdote for my wife and I, which was the catalyst that began this journey by attending a CLBC, or Community Living British Columbia housing meeting here just in nearby Lynn Valley. It was at this Community Living BC meeting that my wife and I found ourselves surrounded by close to 20 60 and 70-year-old parents, some with their own disabled children with them, all searching for suitable supportive living spaces. Marnie and I quickly realized that based on the stories that we listened to and empathized with greatly, that we needed to start, and we needed to start to act soon. To take action in searching out living spaces that provided the scaffolding of connection and community in both social and vocational realms that have sustained our kids throughout their unique journey of childhood, adolescence, and into the high school years. Another true motivation is, as the Awesome Housing Society, is to create a template or path for those families that are most certainly following us. And we have children living with them with life-changing disabilities, so that their path will be a little bit more certain and definitely brighter.
So we know we're not the only interest group facing housing issues, but our young adults with cognitive disabilities are a hidden and underserved group. We can only guess how many families there are like ours on the North Shore when you just look at each high school, each grade, and each classroom. And we can, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but all three municipalities are in the North Shore are desperately in need of more affordable housing and more rental stock as well.
So we'll go quickly through these ones. This is a chance to introduce our 5 young adults. This is Simon, our son. He's 19 years old and a grade 13 student at Sutherland. He's doing what we call a victory lap, grade 13. COVID kind of erased a few work experience opportunities. So he's now doing grade 13. All of them are a similar age. They've all grown up on the North Shore. They're transitioning from high school and from the Ministry of Child and Family Development to CLBC. It's a very complex process, but they're amazing and they make great tenants as well. Simon has Fragile X syndrome and autism, but he's a kick-ass mountain biker and skier and super friendly and just loves the band Coldplay. We got together as a group a number of years ago, but we're all connected. And so Simon, if you want to switch, goes to school with Oliver. Oliver's parents and I have a connection in our wilder days, but our sons go to school together, and now we're out of time.
Can we continue? Or?
Yes. Are you? Yes.
Yeah. They have lunch together at Sutherland almost daily. Next person.
This is our son, Marnie and myself, are the proud parents of Aiden, and that great big smile. He's in his 12th grade at West Van Secondary and is tonight at Special Olympics Golf down at Ambleside, priming up for the big tournament out at Glen Eagles. He lives with speech apraxia, a pervasive global developmental delay, and will need that full-time kind of constant input and prompt as he goes through life. But I feel that with a smile like that, he's got a lot ahead of him.
I should say a couple more things about Oliver. He's one of the friendliest and funniest guys I've ever met, and he has big dreams. He's already making them happen.
And this is my son TJ, and if he wasn't home sick today, he would be on his way to the Special Olympics soccer at Carson Graham in the fields behind. He's right now doing grade 13 as well, and learning how to be more independent in the community. We're really proud of him. He is in, going to be starting in September, the VCC cooking program for people with cognitive disabilities. And he's like a typical teenager in many ways. He likes sports, music, playing Xbox, but he's going to require some level of daily support for the rest of his life, helping making important decisions, managing multiple step directions, and managing his anxiety. And if he was at soccer, he'd be hanging out with Trey. He's a young man attending West Vancouver High School in grade 13. He has Hunter syndrome, or MPS 2, which is a rare and progressive disease. And he too loves being in the community, meeting new people, spending time with friends, playing sports. And he needs a safe, supported, and secure life of his own in this community.
So we started in 2018. We've been formulated, as Leanne mentioned, since 2020. We wanted to really make sure folks knew that we had skin in the game and that we were serious. We've toured housing models. We have networked with various community groups and developers. We've talked to Atira, BC Housing, Family Support Institute has been bringing new models of housing and projects to us weekly. We've talked to Pass Housing. We've applied for a grant at Van City. They're very interested in helping support our plan to actually create a formula for families to follow. In addition, we have a dream of creating a social venture that actually would help to employ the kids and offset costs in the future. Some of us have worked in the past on developments where, you know, you've reduced the number of parking spaces. These kids are not going to drive. We've toured co-housing. We love some of those kinds of shared housing opportunities where you have potlucks, you bring the outside community in. These are the kinds of things that our kids need. But the outlook's not great. And speaking to CLBC, there's wait lists of up to 5 years for an individual to have housing, and the chances of them being housed together are basically zero. We've been told that, we understand it, and that's a motivator for us. BC Housing listened to our discussion, and they said, please tell everybody we'd be pleased to work with you. So we're at the point now where we've learned enough that it's now to come to the various councils to say, hey, how do we work with you?
And that's where we're at.
That's where we're at.
So how do we work with you?
We're hardworking, we're dedicated, we're committed, we're not afraid. We know it's going to take time, but we really would appreciate knowing who on staff and council is willing to spend some time with us so we can help to bring together the right folks, whether it's foundation, whether it's developer, whether it's a charitable organization. How do we work with you? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation, and it was very informative and important for us to hear from you. I wonder if you could complete the information we have in terms of what your requirement is in terms of both housing. Like what are you talking about in terms of the type of housing that are required for the people under discussion, your children and others, but also what supports are required? Perhaps you could just give
Sure.
some more context over what we're really talking about in terms of making this happen for these people.
We're very open. We've kept ourselves open to as many possibilities as possible, whether it is a couple townhouses together, whether it's a number of units within a building that share community space, whether it's a refurbishment of a particular existing building where, you know, new rules are actually allowing groups to, rather than sell it to a developer, it becomes a possibility for those tenants to buy. We're totally open to it. What we want to do is to be able to take advantage of shared facilities so that these kids can bring the community into them, their family and friends, but also become inclusive within the property that they end up in. There's specific rules. CLBC with the supports. They all require different supports. My son needs 24-hour, Leanne's son does not. But if they're housed together, we can amortize some of those supports so that TJ would benefit from what is provided to Simon. All of the parents are very committed, so we would be involved supporting all of those kids and also giving ourselves respite to do so. But there's rules. So a particular support worker could not go down the stairs and go back up in a townhouse and deal with someone that has a problem. They're not allowed to do that. So let's work with developers. Let's create a pass-through, somewhat like a hotel room where rooms adjoin. So we're doing the research on some of those things to say, whatever it is that's available, we're willing.
And I just want to add too, from a physical construction perspective, we're not looking for, other than the connections that Karen mentioned, we don't need accessibility
No.
needs. So the units can be resold or re-rented if our young adults happen to move somewhere else or something and their circumstances change.
In speaking to Pass Housing, they've just completed a project with Cascadia Developments in Vancouver. The kids have been in there for a year, and the reports are they are amazing tenants. They're stable, they're long-term, they're great neighbors. They're really pleased with what they're seeing. They've made some accommodations for them where, you know, if someone is averse to sunshine, they're on a cooler side if they need to not be near a noisy elevator. So they've worked with them in advance, but they got them they got 16 individuals into an existing housing project. Everyone's adaptable. So the sky's the limit. We're very flexible. We just want them to be able to be in the community. If you move them to another community, you would completely upend all of the scaffolding, the programs, the services that they're accustomed to. So it would be like setting the dynamite off in their lives. They know transportation and libraries and doctors and dentists here. And so that's why we're very committed to trying to keep them in what is obviously one of the happiest cities on earth, as we know from media coverage recently. It's the best place.
Okay. Next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Thank you for your presentation. Certainly, I'm, connected to families that are in your position. And I remember one of my girlfriends, she has a low functioning son with autism. And when she paid off her mortgage and retired, she then had to begin the next part of her journey, which was to look after his support for when she's gone. So it was starting all over again. And they've been working on that for years. Have you contacted the Intellectual Disability Society? Do you know Len Slade of Connections? So there's already models in this community. They've got 10 houses right now. They house 48 residents with cognitive disabilities. And we've worked with them over the years. And I think certainly Len Slade is the president. I was just speaking to him the other day. So it's the Intellectual Disabilities Society of North and West Vancouver. And I think you should go down and meet with them. I would certainly contact Len on your behalf and let them know that you would be interested in talking to them. But exactly what you are trying to achieve is what they have done in the past. And there's not enough, obviously. I mean, this is the problem, that these models do exist in communities, but there's just not enough. And certainly the cost of houses to house people is the largest impediment that you will face. And so that's where money from foundations, charitable societies is going to assist. But I think, I hear everything that you're saying, and you and I worked with a couple several years ago that were looking at buying a property, and we can be very flexible in what we can allow on that property. A main house where people would come to the main house, and then building smaller units on maybe a larger piece of land around that house to house people in pairs. There's been all sorts of different discussions. So it sounds like you're not quite there yet. You know what you want, but it's the bricks and mortar that you're sort of having challenges with. Is that correct?
Well, it's more, everyone says you need land, or you need to understand better what are your district affordable housing allotments, which developers have those, what are the extent of those, how do you how do you work with all of those? So many have done this, but
Mhm.
it seems to be a different path each and every time.
Mhm.
It's not consistent. And so what we're saying is, how do we work not only with the municipality, but we have enough relationships now that we have developers interested, we have charities interested. We want to find a way to bring them all together. And we very much feel that the municipality is also a stakeholder.
Mhm. So I would just suggest, I'm sure we all have our different ideas about the direction this could go, but certainly meeting with groups that are already doing it in this community. So the disability connections, and also meeting with our staff. We can set something like that up so you can have a better idea and they can have a better idea of your needs, and you can have a better idea as to what our sort of how we operate with our
And that's
legislation.
exactly why we're
And,
here.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so that's very simple. And when you get up after this, when we all raise our hands and applaud you for the work that you're doing and for this journey that you're on, then one of our staff member right here will get up and follow you up into the hall and connect with you and give you a number. And then you can set up a meeting with them. And
We really appreciate your time and for listening. Thank you.
We actually have a couple more questions. And I was just going to say, and we have a response from Mr. Milburn. I was just going to say, you know, the provincial government has the most direct relationship with this type of housing, and almost all of the agencies that you mentioned, I could say off the top that their primary source of funding is the province of BC.
Yes.
The housing that the district does own, and in some cases we own the land, some cases we own the land and the buildings, they are always put into the hands of a society.
Mhm.
There's no housing remaining that the district directly owns and operates this kind of housing out of. It's gone to Hollyburn, it's gone to North Shore Disability Resource Center, it's gone to all of the different partner agencies that we have, because the municipality doesn't have access to the same provincial resources that these societies can bring to the table. And so the challenge is you're in one respect, you're asking for something that we don't have. However, what we can do is when those societies, or if a society you're working with comes forward with a particular property, with a particular plan, there may be ways that we can do sort of hardship variations to make sure that that building is built to suit your needs, regardless of other limitations that would normally be in place on it. But the municipality, I have no examples where the district actually owns the programming in any way. It has to be done through society.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's-
so our staff can definitely advise your architect or developer, or who you've acquired the land from, on what can possibly be built on that space. But as far as the district owning the land, you know, all of the instances I have, it's partnered up with a nonprofit agency, and the district doesn't directly manage.
If I can just clarify, we've had conversations and connections with a number of organizations, but we don't have land.
Yeah.
And so we're looking to find in the development process, or the rezoning or development process, how do we become that unhidden, so that when there is an opportunity for some sort of social or affordable housing unit to be concluded in that new development or that renovation, that we're considered. Because right now, what I'm hearing is most of those opportunities are going to needed populations as well, like seniors and moms with single kids, and and the homeless. I mean, those are all important groups as well. So how do we get into that list of people to be considered when those projects come up?
Yeah, and typically when our staff can probably direct you better than I could even on this, but the deep dive social and affordable housing becomes deep dive social and affordable because the province has funded it through one of their agencies. So we don't, through the normal course, end up with deep dive social and affordable housing that's entirely within the hands of the District of North Vancouver. It becomes deep dive social and affordable, rent geared to income, special needs, specific housing, PWD credit tied housing, because it already has a partnership with the provincial government. But Mr. Milburn, you had some additional comments. I don't know if you can.
Thank you, Worship. Just happy to note that we'd be happy to meet with these folks and discuss their excellent presentation, and describe for them the various pathways that are available to them, either through private development or through the development of district lands or the use of district properties. We also rent out properties to societies, which don't typically come available too often. But I just want to note, with council's direction, close to 900 units of this various types of supportive and social housing have been approved by council since the official community plan was adopted. And I think it's a testament to the need, but it isn't meeting the full need. We know there is more, and hence council's given us some direction to continue to look at the use of district lands, as well as negotiating for affordable and special needs housing. We're happy to connect you into those opportunities because we play a very important facilitation role for the provision of that housing. And so we'd be happy to meet with you.
Good,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have Councillor Mong.
Thank you for your presentation. Previous to being on council, I actually worked at BC Housing. You probably know that. My job was to work with organizations like CLBC and MCFD to mostly secure group homes. But as Mayor Mike Little said, the funding came from the provincial government. When I was at BC Housing, the role for the municipality was to kind of permit either a group home or that kind of environment based on zoning. So that was their role. But from the projects I remember, as Mayor Mike Little said, it's not so much contributing money or land. It was MCFD or CLBC in some ways hiring BC Housing to go find that land and buy it. And the funding came from that ministry. Can I just ask some questions? Are your children clients of MCFD or
They're now
CLBC?
shifting to CLBC.
Because they're
so-
aging out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's understandable. Yeah.
But they, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought they changed the age up to 25 now. That's only foster kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so most of them are going to end up living with us until they're, well, until we can figure this out.
Yeah.
That they're not at risk in any
Right.
sense of the word, but a group home is probably something that we're not interested in. We want them embedded in the community, and we're all trying to make plans for when we're dust in the wind.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that BC Housing was doing with, I think with CLBC, they were, in addition to group homes, they were looking at buying condos. So they were gonna try to integrate more into the community. So like, to be honest, you walk down the aisle or the hallway in a condo building, you won't know who lives there, right? So, I mean, I can see where you're trying to get to. And I'm glad to hear from Dan that, or sorry, Mr. Milburn, that, you know, we are willing to work with you. And like Councilor Murray said, you know, I would love to be at the table at this to share ideas on how we can make this work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Councillor Pope.
Well, it always comes back to the same old thing, which is we need more affordable housing. And we absolutely need to include people with intellectual disabilities, pardon me, in our planning for affordable housing. What I'd like to see, and one of the easier pathways to success in this, is a developer come in with a proposal for rentals or stratas that would include affordable housing, and in particular, homes for people with disabilities. And that's something we as council can insist on, we can negotiate for, we can put pressure on everyone to try and make that happen, because it absolutely must happen. I cannot imagine the worry that you must feel for your children's futures, thinking of when you're no longer able to take care of them. And there are so many others in the same position in our community. And one other question I had for you was, you're advocating for your kids, and there's 5, but are you also advocating for the other children within the,
Yes.
or youth within?
Yeah,
Yes.
so those that are English as a second language come from cultures as immigrants that don't have the advocating gene or culture. There are lots of those in our realm. We've had a lot of folks approach us and ask if they could join the society. Shockingly, our answer is no, because we need to be functional. And so the answer is no, but the answer is actually yes, because in our plan, we're also planning to include those that are not able to advocate for themselves. We come across them at all times. We're all, we're all at the end of that phone helping folks make their way through these programs. And obviously we're advantaged that way. So the answer is absolutely yes. We are wanting to find some kind of formula, because what we see in all these different versions of housing that have been created, it's always different. There's not a clear path, and we want to actually, Van City is actually interested in hearing from us and funding some kind of proposal that actually helps establish a path forward regardless of the community that they're in, and creating some kind of guidebook or information book that would help families like us or groups like us.
Yeah, just like that, as you've heard tonight, there's so many different arms at play, fingers and toes.
Yeah.
It always seems to be that it's a group that has to advocate for 5 years to get a building built. And then another group comes along and goes through the same slightly different process. And so it'd be great if we could become that streamlined process that then could be followed for years to come.
Yeah,
A template.
the template.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
paving the way for so many others in the future. So thank you very much for all of the work that you do and have been doing, and keep up the good work. It's not easy.
Thanks, Councillor Pope.
Sir back.
Very much. I just wanted to say thank you for coming tonight. As counselors around this table, we only know what we know. And I think for you to come and present and really give us your story and what you're trying to do is really valuable. So hopefully you've heard some good advice here. I think connecting with our staff will certainly be a good next step. And we look forward to hearing more from you as you continue to do the work. So thank you very much
Great.
for your advocacy.
Thank you, Councillor Back. The matter's been moved and seconded. I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you so much for your presentation here today.
For your time.
Okay, Council, as we move into the reports, I would like to propose a consent agenda for items 8.3, 8.4, and 8.7. I can read off the titles. So 8.3 is Youth and Film Bursary Award. 8.4 is the District Logo Use Policy. And 8.7 is the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund report.
You want to throw 8.2 in there?
It's the first time it's been up. Yeah, I'm going to propose 3, 4, and 7. Is there consent for that? Okay, I'll call the question on the consent agenda. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Those, if you're here for those items tonight, items 8.3, 8.4, and 8.7, they were just passed. Okay, now returning to the regular schedule, we have item 8.1. This is the proposed changes to secondary suite regulations. I'm looking for an opening comment from staff. Ms. Appa.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. Good evening, everybody. This report outlines some proposed changes to the size of secondary suites, looking at a higher maximum size, introducing a new minimum size. This report follows on work that was done over the past year related to looking at options in all of our single family neighborhoods. There are a number of pieces of work in this portfolio, if you will, that will be coming back to council over the coming months. I'd like to turn it over with your permission to Jessica Lee, the project planner, who will give a little bit more of an outline.
Thank you. Ms. Lee.
Thank you. Good evening. This report and proposed bylaw amendments aim to support larger and more livable secondary suites in single-family homes, consistent with the findings from the public engagement undertaken last year. These findings and potential next steps were discussed at the council workshop held on February 13th. This discussion included next steps for secondary suite sizes and ways to improve livability of basement suites. This report is the first step. The proposed changes described in this report include increasing the maximum size to the lesser of 130 square meters or 49% of the net floor area of the single family home, introducing a minimum size of 25 square meters to support the livability of smaller suites, introducing regulations for the location and appearance of a suite's exterior entrance to maintain the existing neighborhood character, updating the definition of secondary suite to clarify that it is an accessory use to single-family homes and cannot be stratified, updating the list of enforcement fines related to secondary suites, and rescinding the existing secondary suites and family residential units policy as it is outdated and no longer reflects the district's current bylaw enforcement procedures. Staff recommend that the bylaw amendments be given first reading and forwarded to a public hearing, and that the council policy be rescinded. So Dan Milburn, Tina Atba, and I are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I had a couple of questions. I'm willing to move the motion, and is there a seconder for the motion? Okay, seconded. I saw Councillor back first. I do have some questions though. I remember the discussion at the time. I don't really remember the discussion about different entrances on different facades, and I've got to imagine that there's going to be some cases where an entrance is sort of off the back of a carport and might be on the same general cardinal direction off of the house. Are we anticipating that that would be problematic, or as soon as it's off the front face, therefore it's an entirely different aspect? Like I can think of several where there's an entrance on the back of a carport that would be on the same south facing or north facing side as the main entrance. Are we going to make any of the existing suites non-compliant by this regulation?
Well, thank you, Mayor Little. One of the areas that we looked at quite closely was how to minimize the impact of larger suites on the character of a single family neighborhood, given that the size was coming up to quite a bit higher and the percentage as well higher. So the bylaw does include an amendment that proposes that this entrance to the suite be on a separate building face or separate elevation to try and offset any potential impact to the neighborhood of people, more people coming and going. We think that this presents a reasonable approach to that. The existing, as if any bylaw change, properties that might have a different arrangement right now would be legal non-conforming, so they would not be impacted. They would be able to continue. The bylaw does propose that this become a bylaw provision and could be varied through a development variance permit.
So I think the point you're trying to get at is that if it's going to look like a duplex, it should have duplex zoning. Is that kind of what we're trying to address in this aesthetic change? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We know that there is work coming from the province that will look at changes to multi-units on single family lots. We're waiting for that work. However, in the meantime, what we want to make sure and start incrementally is to manage the appearance so as to minimize any impacts that it might have in some neighborhoods.
So I don't have a, I don't know how dramatic this is, like how much of this is going to change our secondary suites going forward. I can see a situation where when you get rid of the minimum size, all of a sudden the main floor gets divvied up between two different suites, and therefore you're going to end up with two main floor entrances to the house, and it's going to have the effect of looking like it's a completely split duplex type property without having the zoning of a duplex property. I don't know how much that necessarily matters, but I'm willing to move it forward as it is, although I think it's probably something we'll have to revisit as the province changes the regulations coming up in the fall, which will probably dramatically change how we have to treat duplexes and triplexes in the community. So I'm okay with it in that regard. The other question though that I had is the minimum size of the suite. Is that at 259 square feet? Do we have any legal suites that are below 259 square feet that would become non-compliant by this new regulation?
Through the mayor, we, as per page, or in the report, we do have readily available data on secondary suites. And from this data, it shows that there aren't any suites that are below 25 square meters that we are aware of.
So none would be made non-compliant by this minimum suite size?
That we are aware of, but similar to what Ms. Adva mentioned, that if they are below and approved, then they would remain legal non-conforming.
On both of these items, minimum lots, minimum secondary suite size, and on the facade entrance issue, are either of those able to be handled by the Board of Variance, or does this make them a hard and fast regulation with no ability to adapt for hardship?
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. Board of Variance typically hears cases based on hardship. Many zoning bylaw provisions such as this would go through a development variance permit. However, hardship runs with the land, and there's a possibility that the Board of Variance could continue this or could review this. However, my understanding is that our normal course would be through a development variance permit.
Okay. I'm willing to advance this in the state it's in, but I think we're going to have to take a second look at both of those aspects as we go into the fall and see what the provincial government brings forward with the duplex and triplex guidelines that they're contemplating. This is probably a temporary change at best, but I'm willing to support it as is. I think I had the seconder was Councillor Back. Your comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, staff, for all the work that you've put into this so far. I shared the same concern with the mayor about the entrance issue. I don't recall discussing that, and so I think that's one that I think we should revisit, but I'll be supporting it to go to first reading. I think what we're trying to do is incentivize the creation of more suites and more livable suites that are going to work for anybody, including families, which is why we're looking at increasing the maximum size to 1,400 square feet. So I'm supportive of that. I just hope that what we are doing is incentivizing and not, creating more policy that's going to get in the way of creating more of this important component of rental housing. As we know, secondary suites make up a pretty high percentage of all of the rental housing that we have in the district. So I don't want to put anything that's going to introduce anything new that's just going to get in the way of creating more supply, which is certainly what we need. So I'm supportive of this going to first reading, but I definitely do want to hear more from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is Councillor Hanson, followed by Councillor Pope. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for the work you've done and the proposal. A question that I would ask, given that we're seeking to achieve flexibility and accommodate people who wish to have secondary suites, what's the evil that we are seeking to correct by imposing any kind of a size limit? If our goal is to create more affordable rental housing in the form of secondary suites, why wouldn't we let people say you can rent out suites as large as you like? So perhaps what would be the answer to that, or as small as you like, for that matter, that would accommodate, as Councillor Pope discussed in the workshop, if a smaller size actually accommodates a person's lifestyle and budget, why wouldn't we allow that?
Thank you very much, through your worship, to Councillor Hanson. Secondary suite is a secondary suite, so at this point it's considered lesser or subordinate in size area to a main dwelling unit. It is that's not an evil, I would say. However, it is a recognition that a secondary suite is a unit, but it's secondary, if you will, to the main unit. So there is a basic principle around proportion and size. As we look to the future and look at other housing types on single family lots, work that will come through provincially, for example, it could be that future does look like more equal sized units permitted on a single family lot. We're not quite there yet. We expect to be moving there, and our infill housing work that was presented earlier this spring and engagement on last spring points to some of those directions. But at this time, and through quite careful legal consideration with our staff solicitor, both the item related to entranceways and emphasizing the subordinate nature of the suite were really very important, trying to strike a balance without trying to make it more problematic or timely or costly for people. On the matter of the small size, we had a discussion at the workshop in February that actually looked at a slightly higher size. I think it was 30 or 35 square meters, and we heard around the council workshop table an interest in actually looking smaller than that. So I think there does get to a point where we like to look at livability. We heard clearly that, we know people in many places around the world live in very small units. We are trying to find the balance at this time that we think is appropriate for the district.
Can I just clarify one thing from the first point, though? If someone decides that they want to have a 25% suite and a 75% suite, the owner can live in the 25% suite and rent out the 75% suite. It's just the nature of one being larger becomes de facto the primary suite. Is that a fair characterization?
Your worship, actually, the secondary suite provisions in the BC Building Code are a separate section. So they essentially are designed to be an accessory use to the principal single-family use. So we've tried to reflect regulations back to council, and that was the discussion of the workshop.
But an owner could live in
to
either
control it.
unit.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
There isn't a control with respect to the living or renting either unit this time. The importance, though, is that what we're trying to do is respond to changes to the provincial regulations around a secondary suite and expand it to an amount that gets very close to what 49%, I think, is essentially the maximum. So that puts it in, it continues to maintain it as an accessory use, the single family home being the principal use. But you can see by the 49%, it's virtually equal. So to go beyond that amount, you're really creating the secondary suite as the principal use, which is not the intent of the provincial regulations.
The evil that I see, to use that expression, in the existing or the proposed zoning, I mean, my spouse and I live in a 4,000 square foot home, and that's more space than the two of us require. So let's say we decided to rent out half of the home. It's not allowed under the what's proposed, because there is a absolute square footage requirement of, I think, 1,400. So I just think if our goal is to create flexibility and provide this transition, vacant housing, or that there's much of it through the district, people owning these larger homes and are not occupying them fully. If our goal is to make that available as the most affordable form of rental, which I believe it is, then I think a still more flexible approach would be.
But I think we're actually saying the same thing. You can make the owner's suite
But what if-
45% and the rentable portion 55% of the property.
But there's a limit of
It
14.
it just won't be a secondary versus a primary.
There's a limit of 14, even under this proposal, there's a limit of 1399.
Yeah.
So that may not, we're forfeiting 600 square feet potentially of space that we could make available to.
No, you can just have that, you can rent out the primary. And you can stay in the
Maybe
secondary.
maybe we don't want to do that. We don't want to live in 1,400 square feet.
Well, that's your problem.
I just think greater flexibility could make more housing available. That's the point I'm making. But I will be voting to move this to the next reading.
Okay. Mr. Milburn.
Just wanted to, oh, pardon me. I just wanted to make the point that, and as announced on April 3rd, the provincial government anticipates changing the single family home regulations.
I'm gonna have to ask you to speak up.
Sure. As announced on April 3rd, the provincial government anticipates changing the single family home regulations across the province. The details, however, have not been published, so we await that detail from the province later this year. However, we do anticipate they need to come back to council and talk about issues of duplex, triplex, quadplex, and sixplex. And those will inevitably have different regulation needs associated with them. Secondary suite is just one of the options available in that future scenario. So we will definitely have more to come. This is essentially dealing with a first step in a conversation following from council's February workshop. Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker I have is Councillor Pope, followed by Councillors Ma and Murray. So Councillor Pope, your comments, please.
Thanks very much. While I support increasing the size of secondary suites, I find the proposals in the rest of this report to suggest more barriers and disincentives to building secondary suites. And yet here we are in a housing crisis. And it's a situation so terrible for people trying to find housing in the district that the province is now imposing targets on us. And for the record, I totally support the district being put on the list of municipalities that must come up with ways to speed up processes and create more housing, especially affordable housing. It's our responsibility as politicians and leaders to ensure we're doing whatever we can for the future livability of our community. So to me, all of these restrictions that nobody asked for, that weren't part of our discussions, such as maximum size, minimum size, single family homes only, most of what's in this report is providing more barriers to affordable housing. And it's, to me, exactly the opposite of what we must start doing. We must shift our focus. to Councillor Hanson's point about maximum size. It's only 1399 square feet. It's too small for families and 3 bedrooms. And not only that, but in your materials for the public survey, it found that 74% thought that it should be 1,400 square feet or larger, so that there would be no maximum limit. And yet here we are talking about making a new bylaw that would restrict the maximum size. And for families like Councillor Hanson's and many others, it just doesn't make sense. The minimum size, I support it. People could live in a small studio that could provide affordability. I don't understand why we're now taking the current policy 7.2.2, as I understand it, which currently permits secondary suites or lock-off units within townhouses, row houses, and apartments. We're deleting that, once again, making affordability even harder. And we're creating a new policy that limits secondary suites to only single-family homes. This makes no sense to me. Why would we abolish this existing policy when this type of housing is desperately needed? City of North Van allows secondary suites and duplexes, City of Vancouver, Port Moody. Why are we going to be putting, again, more restrictions on housing, especially housing that meets the needs of affordable housing? I've talked to developers about building lock-off suites in townhouse developments. They're often small studios that you wouldn't even know are there, but they can house a student or an aging parent or someone needing a small, affordable place to rent. So we don't want to be ruling this out. Again, I also agree with the adding exterior entrances. Good Lord, where did that come from? Like, it makes no sense whatsoever. The province is currently trying to incentivize people to build secondary suites and make them affordable. But if somebody who's living in a single family home on a fixed income wants to build a secondary suite so they can have an extra $2,000 a month or whatever, and their stairs are going down to the basement suite from the front door, and they're now being told they have to put an entranceway in the back. Again, totally disincentivizes people from pursuing that option if it's going to cost them too much money. So my suggestion here is to not move this forward. It seems a waste of time to me when it doesn't take us in the direction that we're being forced to do and what we should do, which is reduce barriers to affordability, build more housing, and especially focus on affordable housing. So my suggestion is option, whatever it is, refer it back to staff for adjustments. Those are my comments.
It's been moved and seconded as the staff recommendation, and so I guess that position would be just to vote against the item that's on the floor. Yeah. Okay, so next speaker I have is Councillor Ma.
Thank you. Thank you to the staff. My comments are similar to what you've heard already, so I don't want to belabor it, but the challenge I have is trying to find in this report where there are incentives from the changes to encourage people to, provide the secondary suites. I do appreciate this chart here, just comparing the size and the design. One thing that I would ask if a second report comes back is, can staff provide information on what the charges are to a homeowner to do a secondary suite? The reason I ask is, even though my secondary suite isn't being used and it's my fault, but I'm still being charged that on my property taxes, and I just noticed how much it was. So it'd be interesting to know how our charges compare with maybe these other regions or other municipalities. If we really want to provide an incentive, maybe we should look at potentially a financial incentive waiving fees for a year or something, or there's some sort of incentive financially. But I will not support this as is. And if the motion is not passed, I will support Councillor Pope's motion to send it back to staff.
Thank you, Councillor Murray.
Well, I just have to look back into the past. I voted against the first secondary suite bylaw, and I lived in one, and that when I was first councillor. And I voted against it because the complaint system was one complaint. And I thought that seemed kind of unfair because you can just not like your neighbor and complain, and a secondary suite gets shut down just based on one complaint. So I voted against it. I still have a problem with that one complaint system. We created the first legal suites, which meant that they were built to code because we had a fire in Norgate and there was a loss of life. And so we wanted to make sure that if we were going to house people in people's homes, that they needed to be built safely and to the code. Then with new houses, we started to, people started building suites into those new houses. And what happened? We had subterranean suites. They were lovely, except in order to see the sky, you had to lean under a window well and look up because there was no direct light access into the backyard or out from the secondary suite in the basement. And that was so the builder could reach full heights on the main floor in the house because the basements in the district under the zoning bylaw are not included in the overall square footage. On Keith Road right now, there's a lot of old wartime bungalows for sale, and they're going for around $2 million, maybe a little bit higher than that. And they're building duplexes. They've got duplex zoning on Keith Road in the city of North Vancouver. And those duplexes, if you just look through realtor.ca right now, are going for anywhere from one half, not both, but this is one half. And some of them have 4 bedrooms, but those duplexes are starting at 2 million. And 2 that were just finished are listed at $2.699 million for one half of a duplex. So I just think this is all for naught. It is so broken. What we're doing right now is so broken. We think we're gonna, change the zoning bylaw to accommodate all of these new rules, which I agree with my colleagues are a whole bunch of new things that people have to jump through and a bunch of hoops people have to jump through and are challenging. But somehow we feel like we can build our way out of affordability or into affordability. And we have been building intensely for the last 10 years, longer than that. And what's happened to affordability? Nothing. It just keeps skyrocketing. Supply and demand is not working. These suites, a rental up in the new development up in Lynn Valley is going for $6,200 a month for, what is it, a 3-bedroom and a den. $6,200. That's what density is doing. I think the province, I don't think they get it. I think we should all be at the table talking about all of this and the challenges that we all have. I think you can apply this to new homes, but what about existing homes? Why all of a sudden are we talking about where the entrance is and turning this into a duplex? We never talked about that during this discussion. It never came up. Why are we talking about it now? Because what the province is doing, so we're trying to beat them to the punch. Like, we as a council need to understand, right, the rationale behind this, the reports that are brought forward. And I appreciate the time that you put into this and the forethought that you're thinking. But I think we try to, I'll take my other 2 minutes if I can. We are trying to engineer ourselves into something that is out of our control. And I don't know that we can fix it. I think we're just a very expensive place to live, and I don't see the costs coming down. I know that we have a gentleman in the audience who's going to, or is asking for a variance, a 1.5 foot variance or meter, and building a coach house. And I was talking to a builder that builds nice houses in the district today, and he just finished a coach house, and it cost him $700,000 to build. $700,000 to build a coach house. Now, I'm sure there's different levels of building and quality, but he was saying to me that the mechanics are still the same, the plumbing's still the same, the permits are still the same, the foundations, they're still the same, the construction costs are still the same, the supply chain is still a challenge. The prices are not going down, and I don't believe they ever will. I think we need to make secondary suites simple. That's what they always were, simple. Add a bedroom and a bathroom and put a little kitchen in your basement, and there you've got a place for somebody to live, a young couple or a student, right? Maybe your kids live down there and you charge them rent. I don't know. If they have jobs, they're not going to school. You know, we make everything so complicated, and it's the layer upon layer upon layer of bureaucracy. The province does it, we do it, the federal government does it. Nothing is simple anymore, and it's creating this angst in the community. So I'm going to not vote in favor of this. I think it should go back to staff, and if staff is unclear about where we want to go with secondary suites, then maybe we need to have another meeting and be clear about that. And I think we should actually, you know what's coming with the provincial government. What's the next announcement that they're going to make in regards to how we're going to deal with the complete and stunning unaffordability of this region. I'll just end by going back to Mayor Mike Curley in the city of Burnaby, who I think the guy rocks. He said after he's a second-term mayor and he inherited a bunch of pre-zoned land in Burnaby, and he said if supply and demand worked, Burnaby would be one of the most affordable municipalities in the region, and they're actually one of the most expensive. And they're building more units and more towers than any other municipality in Metro. And they are building it faster than any of us can believe. The cranes are constantly going up. And they're super expensive. So I'm not going to support this.
Okay, thank you very much. And, you know, I think I hear that the council's not happy with it in its current form, and I agree. I was a little surprised that the discussion, there were some things that I don't remember being as part of the workshop discussion. But specifically maximum size and minimum size were discussed in the workshop. But my recollection of the maximum size discussion was, as you say, just straight up to 50%. But I just want to be clear, if we refer this back to staff and we don't put this in even as a temporary measure, where we're talking about opening up the suite sizes from the 976 square feet that they currently now up to an additional almost 500 square feet, then that means we're not adding flexibility today. It means we're punting it back to staff, and it means the likelihood is it would come back while we're just waiting for the provincial government to actually bring out their new regulations. And so if we pass it in its current form, it means we get 6 months of more flexible secondary suites than if we don't pass it. And again, that's why I asked the question about, are there any non-compliant suites with the small lot size? Are there any non-compliant suites with the second phases? Because passing it as is will actually make it more flexible today. And if we refer it back to staff, it's going to take time. We're going to have to talk about those issues. And then we're really going to be on top of when the provincial government has their discussion about secondary and third suites and quadplexes. So if that generally is the will of the room, then I will support changing the motion to referring the item back to staff. I hope people will add their comments now to clarify if that's the intent, but the end result will be that we're not making secondary suites more flexible today.
It's just everything else that was added to it that we didn't talk about during that meeting. So that's a bit of a message.
So I've got Councillors Pope, Hanson, and Ma. Councillor Pope, any additional comments on it before we consider a motion, either the one that's seconded on the floor, or as I said, I'm willing to change it to a referral motion if we need to. Yeah. Councillor. Sorry, I have Councillor Pope up on here first. Councillor Back, you wanted to speak a first time? Or you spoke a first time already? Yeah, okay. So Councillor Pope, your comments, please.
Well, my comment is I totally, am I on? Excellent. I completely disagree with your assessment of this situation, with all due respect, Mr. Mayor. Passing it as it is will not make it more flexible than it is today. It's going to make it less flexible. It has the opposite effect of being more flexible. We've been very clear here, I think, a number of us who's saying that, no maximum limit. We don't want a maximum limit. We want to open things up, make it easier for people, not make it harder for them. And I think staff have heard that message loud and clear. And so again, I'm going to say that I feel very strongly this should just be sent back to, refer back to staff for some amendments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wish it to be clear and understood that I agree with the comments that have been made about the flaws in the proposal, but for the reasons stated by Mayor Little, I am going to be supporting it. I think it would not be a productive step to defeat this right now in all the circumstances. So with the greatest of respect, I'm not agreeing with Councillor Pope in terms of the dynamic of the situation and how to achieve some kind of progress in the short term. So
thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Ma, your comments?
Actually, if I can just maybe ask a couple of questions to clarify so I can make an informed vote. If we pass first reading, it's supposed to go to public hearing.
Correct.
And if it's not in the form that we want, is that not this kind of, lack of a better term, wasting time? Or how soon does that public hearing have to be?
The public hearing would be scheduled in either July or September as it is. And so if we refer it back to staff, start back over again, then refer it to a public hearing, it'll be coming back amid the provincial government's regulation changes anyway.
So on that point, if we did wait, what's the consequences of it? Like, my thoughts are, we know it's coming, we know changes are coming. We know that the government has given signals that they're going to ease up on regulations. What's the consequences of waiting for that to come out first and then adapting our changes to facilitate that? Is there any risks or any downside to doing that?
It just means that you can't take advantage of the changes that were already put in by the provincial government, which was to allow the maximum lot size to exceed 976 square feet or whatever it was. So that regulation was changed, and we have to change our bylaw to take advantage of that change to make it larger suite size.
I'm done.
I just want to be clear. So are you in favor of it in current form, or do you want to refer it back to staff?
I won't support it in its current form.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Back, your comments?
I'm still supportive of moving this to first reading. I think it does provide some more flexibility. There's a couple of things in here that I think, weren't discussed, as seems to be the theme around the table, that weren't discussed when we discussed this previously at the workshop. But I still think it is a step in the right direction, so I will be supporting it.
May I propose an amendment at this point? And so the amendment that I would propose is that we strike the mention of the minimum size, and we strike the mention of the location of the front entrance. And the part that we refer to the public hearing is just simply to take advantage of the province giving us more flexibility on maximum size. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Okay, seconded by Councillor Murray. Mr. Milburn, do you need further direction than that?
Your worship, if the clerk can provide specifics with respect to the resolution, that would be helpful. However, staff have heard, I think striking those two sections, certainly the bylaw can be amended at this stage.
So are you prepared to comment, or Ms. Lance?
Where in the bylaw exactly this is.
It's throughout, but.
Thank you, through your worship. To clarify,
The motion that would be a subsidiary motion would be to amend the bylaw to strike the minimum and maximum size of the secondary suites. If I'm-
No, the minimum size
The minimum size, okay.
and the commentary on the location of the secondary suites door.
But not the maximum size, and not the fact that it's only single family.
The maximum size would still move up. I don't believe the provincial government in their release of the minimum of the maximum square foot size made comment on multifamily in that. That was still for single family. Is that not correct, Mr. Milburn?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay,
It's still an accessory
So the
use to the
province
principal
changed the
single-family
regulation
use.
on single family, and we're trying to take advantage of the change that the province made on single family.
But we could go to 49%. Don't need to have 1599.
You're correct. We absolutely could. I actually thought that was the discussion in the workshop, was going up to 49%, but is there a reason why we limited it to the lesser of the two?
Yes, Your Worship, but we can provide some legal advice for council. The amounts, so we're set in discussions with our solicitor with respect to ensuring it continues to be an accessory use. And the amount is based on essentially our analysis of what a single family house can produce in terms of square footage. And that was deemed through our analysis as being a reasonable number. Again, council can amend that if after hearing from the public, they feel a different number is more appropriate. That could get adjusted at second and third reading. So I guess what I'm saying is I think it makes sense to move forward with the proposal as is and can be adjusted based on input received. And that input would include the feedback we'd provide from our solicitor.
So you're recommending that we proceed as is, and if we hear feedback in the public process, that before we return them, when we return the matter to second and third reading, we can still amend that specific
The maximum
provision.
size, that's correct, Your Worship.
Without changing use or density, therefore not precipitating a return to first reading.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Checking in with the clerk.
Thank you, through your worship. That would make the bylaw reading process much cleaner. So then staff can bring forward an amended bylaw at second and third reading, including a red line version as to what changes. Just on the fly, amending a bylaw to strike references may prove problematic and jeopardize the bylaw reading process. So I would recommend proceeding with that process.
But you're still able to strike the other provisions.
We will strike the other provisions, yes,
Okay.
and bring
So
forward an amended
then
bylaw.
what would go forward to public hearing would be the new maximum size, which is a dramatic increase over the current maximum size. And then if we wish to, at second and third, we can have the legal discussion in order to be able to decide whether we want to go up to 49%. That's your
correct.
recommendation, Mr. Milburn, and
That's correct, Your Worship.
Clerk, you're satisfied with that?
I just need clarity. Why is it we can't just scrap the 1399 square feet from the bylaw, especially given that 74% of the public have already said it should be 1400 square feet or larger?
I don't,
Well, 74 of the people that they connected with,
Well,
not all
Your
of the
Worship, I'm
public.
not aware that's the motion before council, but council could consider that motion at second and third reading after hearing from the public is what
this is
is
the
what is recommended
importance
by
of
staff.
having these questions answered at workshop and not having these matters added after the workshop. Yeah.
I know I want to have my time, but
So I do have a full slate as well. I'd love to be able to get on the table what we're going to talk about. And if it is a new motion, every member of council will have a new opportunity to speak to it. And so I just want to be clear about what I'm putting on the floor vicariously through the clerk is that we're striking any mention of the minimum. We're striking any mention of the location of the door, but we are keeping currently the provision that is the lesser of the two maximum lot sizes at this point to bring it through to public hearing. And once it goes through public hearing, there will still be an opportunity for the council to consider moving that to a new number, which may be up to and including 49, up to 50%.
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, I have that. I would recommend having a seconder and doing this as a formal amendment to the bylaw. So that is
Okay.
completely captured. So if turning to you if there is a seconder.
Okay,
on that.
so I believe it was seconded, although we have changed it materially to, we will in just a moment, everybody will have an opportunity to speak to it, the new motion on the floor once we vote for it and put it on the floor. So Councillor Hanson, did you second or was it Councillor Back? Okay. Councillor Murray seconded the amended motion. Okay. So in my view, so that's now on the floor for discussion. Council can all have a discussion point about that specific issue. I think that this still keeps the flexibility benefit on the table without putting in those two other provisions, which I think we all still had some questions about what the impact would be. So I think this does at least materially move it forward. I think that a lot of this is going to be moot when the provincial government regulations come in potentially in the fall. But again, we're presupposing what they're going to look like. They may not touch maximum lot size. They may not touch minimum lot size. They may not touch anything to do with the aesthetics of the building. And therefore, this would still be the law on those areas. I think it's an improvement over our current law in what's proposed here. So I'll be moving the amendment. Councillor Murray, you're the second round amendment.
Thank you. I would just like to say and concur with you that we have this discussion during a workshop, and that's where all of these things get fleshed out. So the fact that this council is feeling like this is such a, you know, a larger, more complex report and bylaw that is coming forward is a big concern for me, as well as not being able to change it when we're at first reading, because we do have that ability to change it. And it shouldn't be that it's more clean leaving it in its current form rather than addressing the issues of council. That is what we get to do this for. So, you know, I think this is a good lesson. I think staff need to hear us loud and clear that those workshops are where we get all of this out and then they're brought forward. And the surprises are something that we probably don't need to, you know, inject into the report. I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind is just because this happens doesn't mean everybody's going to go out and put a secondary suite in their basement. I really think that we need to understand. We often think that this is going to automatically fix another problem, and it really is not. You know, it's to each his own. Some will, some won't. New houses will probably include, you know, spec development will include a secondary suite. Because they can get more money at the end of the day if there's one included. But I just really don't think that this is going to, you know, change where we are as far as our housing stock in a significant way.
Thank you very much. Councillor, I still have Councillor Hanson. Did you have a comment on this, or is that from before?
No.
Okay. Councillor Back, is that from before, or is that from the amendment? Okay. Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Pope.
So the amendment still doesn't include the fact that
Sorry, the amendment still doesn't include the fact that this applies to single family homes only. Why? Why couldn't it apply to duplexes, townhouses, multiplexes, the kinds of things we're going to be, the province is going to be mandating this fall, we expect? Question for you, Mr. Milburn.
Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Worship. There was discussion at the workshop with respect to the changes to the single family. The proposed regulatory changes at the provincial level are not known in detail, so it would be entirely speculative on my part as to how we could address what has been announced in April 3rd as 3-plex, 4-plex, and 6-plex without any specifics attached to that from the province. So we are in a bit of a vacuum, and I understand that the concerns there, which is why we were essentially focused on the area that we currently control, which is single family. And in respect to the advice provided by council at the time, as summarized by the city manager in the workshop, it did anticipate considering a balanced approach, but looking at an increase in size, as well as establishing a minimum was noted, as well as a maximum by percentage, which was why the bylaw was prepared the way it was. However, we have heard that feedback from council tonight, and we can certainly work with that and adjust the bylaw as directed by council.
So my feeling is this term balanced approach, and I think that's partly why we're in this mess. I do think that yes, it's global. It's a global problem of lack of affordable housing, but it is also the fact that the district has a very poor record of not building the housing that's needed. And the problem that we're in right now is that what we're seeing, and the reason why we have to take exceptional steps and do things like allowing secondary suites and lock-off suites and such in townhouses and duplexes is because of the situation that we're in, because of the lack of affordable housing. It's causing worker shortages, an exodus of young people, families and people who have spent their lives here in the district of North Van are being forced to move out. We have to do something, and we have to do as much as we possibly can. And that means opening our eyes and our single-family homes to other types of housing, infill housing, density housing, coach houses, all of these kinds of things, secondary suites. And that means not just having secondary suites in single-family homes, but also allowing them in other types of housing. So I would like to support this amendment, but I would like to add that we also scrap this restriction on more affordable housing and not just say that it's limited to single-family housing, because that's what it currently is.
All right, I don't see any other speakers. I see, is there a staff hand up back there? Someone's got their thing queued. Tina? No? Okay. All right, I don't see any further speakers on the matter. And so on the issue of the amendment, which is to amend the motion to strike all of the other areas that were in it.
Sorry, to provide clarification, what's on the floor right now is an amendment to the bylaw. So the motion is that bylaw 8525 is amended to strike reference to minimum size and location of the entrance doors. So you'll vote on that first and then vote as the bylaw is amended.
Yeah. So we're voting on
Why
the
is it
amendment.
we can't just add this other bit in to that?
Well, for one thing, we didn't take that through the workshop. We didn't have any public consultation specifically on it. The other is the vast majority of the multifamily buildings are concrete and wood frame construction on multiple floors, and adding secondary suites to a place that's not designed with it built in doesn't work. We actually don't have a restriction on building it in new. And so we have a development that's underway right now that's been proposed. I went to the PIM, the public information meeting just the other day, and it has lock-off suites proposed in it. And I know we've approved, I think it's 2 other projects with some form of lock-off suites in it in the last year. So we actually do already allow lock-off suites in multifamily as new builds. It's very hard to retrofit them in, particularly in a concrete structure. And so we don't get many proposals to do that. But we do allow it in new, and we do have current proposals that have the lock-off capability within it.
Okay, then. Thank you for that explanation.
Okay. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. The motion is amended. It is now back on the floor. Council, I believe we've already had a run through with council, so I'm going to call the question on the amended motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Sorry that was such a messy affair to get through, but I think we're going to have to fine tune what we talked about in the workshop to make sure that that the specific things that were talked about end up being very specifically addressed when it comes back for first reading, because I think that this one wasn't as smooth as it could have been. The next item up for discussion is item 8.2. This is a development variance permit 52.22 911 Drayton Street. And I do believe we have some comment from staff.
Yes. Sorry, Your Worship. This is a development variance permit for a coach house at 911 Drayton Street. I do have some visual on the screen. Very simple one. So this is a height variance for a 2-story coach house. And it's interesting to note that the proposed coach house would replace the existing detached garage with an unauthorized secondary suites. So it will be within the total of the existing footprint, only a little bit higher. So the image on the left is showing the existing garage with an authorized secondary suites, and then the proposed coach house is to the right. And staff evaluated the application, and we deemed that it meets council bylaw, regulation, and guidelines. We also look at the built form, and if you can bring up the next slide. We find the proposed building fit quite well in the landscape, which consists mostly of garages, both to the north and south of the lane. The next one. So, yeah, so that's to the south of the lane. So with that, we do think that the building fits into the neighborhood, and we do recommend approval of the variance.
Thank you very much. I'll be moving the recommendation.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Murray. Just my own comments on this. I know I've had mixed voting record on the second story aspect of coach houses. I've largely been supportive of coach houses. I've had some challenges with some of the overlook that's created by secondary suites, or sorry, by coach houses. I'm comfortable with this one. I think that the overlook is minimized. It's a well-treated property to the side, and so I'll be supportive of issuing this. Councillor Murray, your comments? Okay, I don't know if this is from report. Councillors Pope, Hanson, and Back are all queued. Councillor Pope? Councillor Pope, your comments?
Sorry, that was for previous.
Okay, sorry, I didn't clear it. Sorry, next is Councillors Hanson and Back.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy to support. I've visited the site. I've reviewed the comments that were made by the neighbor in opposition. I don't believe that the parking issue is going to be significant, given that there's 3 parking stalls provided on the proposal. I also note that the Keithland Brooksbank Community Association has not provided any feedback. A couple of comments that I would make. One is, I would like a streamlined process whereby these 2-story coach houses in circumstances like this, in any event, don't require approval of council. I think this could be dealt with on a more expedited basis. And also note that I don't see why we are prohibiting a basement suite in a property that has a coach house. And I know this is a discussion underway, but it illustrates a point, I think, that we're creating a prohibition on a basement suite as a result of introducing a coach house. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually agree with all of Councillor Hanson's comments as well. I think we need to be able to streamline 2-story coach houses and permit secondary suites on the same single-family lots. They do this in the city of North Vancouver, been doing it very successfully for a long time. I just wanted to also state that I think we need to be very clear with the applicants about what the entire process is from tonight and before tonight until a building permit. I know, we've approved a number of these. One of them that comes to mind is the one on Frederick Road that came and council approved it in November of 2021. And I don't think they have a building permit even today. And it's because a number of things came up as they were going through the process, and it felt to them like they just didn't have all the requirements up front. So again, it's just, if we want to see more coach houses, and I think there's broad council support because we agree that this is an important form of housing. It's all we've been talking about tonight is how do we create more diversity of housing. Coach houses do have an important role to play, but we have to make it, a process that people want to embark on in order to create them. The other one with this is that the applicant currently has a driveway, I think, and they're going to have to get rid of the driveway only to create more parking in the back. Is that correct?
That's right. So the existing driveway off Drayton will be removed.
Which again, doesn't really make sense to me. Like, why are we asking them to give up parking that's off-street parking that's already there in order to create more off-street parking? That again, doesn't make sense, but I'm very supportive of the application and pleased to see it move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Councillors Ma, Hanson, and Murray. Councillor Ma, your comments?
Thank you. I also drove by the site this weekend. I will support the staff recommendation to issue a development variance permit. In other applications that's come forward, parking seems to be one of the key issues. And in this particular case, with that little modification, staff has reported that the proposed access and parking do meet district requirements. So that seems to be not an issue. And I do support gentle densification such as coach houses and laneway houses. So once again, I'll be supporting the staff's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray?
Well, Councillor Bax just reminded me of the property that we dealt with in the same area in regards to the front driveway and the rear. And I thought council agreed during that council meeting that we wanted staff to look into the removing of that clause, which states that the front driveway needs to be removed. And so again, now we're facing this application, which was in the same position as the previous application that we talked about, and nothing's happened. So do you want me to throw a motion on the floor after this agenda, and we will give direct direction to staff to report back
Let's
on the
get a
removal of
commentary
those
from staff first.
driveway?
Yeah. Mr. Milburn, I don't know if you recall the specific instance, but yes.
Yeah, that was referred to staff with respect to the parking and traffic bylaw and the connection. So I understand staff are working on that. Possibly Mr. Joyce's area may wish to comment on that. In terms of timing, with respect to this application, Ms. Yan can comment, but I believe the applicant is wanting the orientation that's proposed within the development variance permit in terms of parking and access. So
They're nodding their heads back and forth that they don't. They'd love it, like the other applicant.
And then we won't have to get rid of
Okay, sorry, I need to be able to get people on the record. I'm not able to have people talking from the audience.
That's obviously wrong.
Apologies, but so Mr. Milburn, to be clear, does the council have the ability to suspend the that provision while we're reviewing the matter? Or like, I get the point. The point of removing the driveways is so that you have more street parking out in front, like the city of North Vancouver, where they don't have driveways out front. They just have one continuous walkway, one continuous streetway, no garages out front because they've made that trade-off. So I get why the rule was put in the first place, but the question is, in some areas, the laneways are inadequate to be able to service the properties, and it makes sense to retain the driveway on the front. And so I guess the flexibility, what flexibility does council have to suspend that requirement at this point? Mr. Milburn.
Your worship, council can in any variance permit suspend this requirement. It's a condition that would be applied at the time that staff reviews applications for, say, new driveway accesses. They would take direction from the bylaw council produced. However, council can issue a variance, in this case, providing direction to staff to allow additional driveways, more than than is shown in the application package for you tonight. So specifically defined as the driveway that is anticipated to be closed, in the drawing package shown on page 59. Council could provide that direction to allow that to continue. However, if there is a desire for this matter to be referred to staff to comment on safety or other matters, I would look to Mr. Joyce to provide that comment.
Through your worship, I know it's on the work plan to bring the development services bylaw back to change that as per council's direction. I think it was last month we looked at that. I think your worship, you commented on it. It's always a trade-off between the road classification and the minor leg versus the major leg, which is used for the driveway access. But that's also in the contrast with providing as much mass parking as required. But to Mr. Milburn's comment, we could certainly take it away, and I think it's within our authority to do that at this point.
So
I just want to be clear. So Mr. Milburn, would you say that we have the ability to vary the variance permit here tonight to allow for the applicant to do either? Or are you suggesting, as I think I may have heard you say, that we would approve the variance permit as it is, and then before they get to that stage in the project, we would issue another variance for the driveway? Is that what you're recommending?
Your worship, I'm suggesting there's potentially two processes here. One is to look at the regulation overall. That's a broad conversation. Staff already have direction in that case. If council feels that they don't feel that the driveway should be closed on the main street, they can provide that direction by resolution tonight, and the variance will reflect that direction.
So you're saying amend the regulation district-wide tonight, or just suspend it on this one?
Suspend it with respect to this variance application. Council can approve through the variance direction to allow the driveway to continue through a resolution on this particular site.
Okay. I'd like to return to Councillor Murray now that you know what would have to happen.
So we've got parking in the back for the coach house, which would stay, and then parking in the front for the main house, which under the discussion that we're having now and what we had before with that previous applicant, that garage would stay as well. And I just want to make sure that that's what the applicants understand under the scenario that we're talking about, that the front driveway could stay, but the rear parking would also be required for the coach house. And you're all nodding your heads up and down. Okay, good. So you understand. I would like to amend that right now to allow that.
Okay.
And so I will just say that the amendment would be that the main driveway would remain under this application and not be required to be removed.
Just to be clear to staff, would you prefer we word it as we suspend the requirement, or are you saying we vary, or how would you like us to handle it to give you the flexibility to work in this situation?
Your worship, to add it to the list of variances that are proposed, it'd be a variance to the provisions of district bylaws and allow the existing driveway to be part of the proposed variance application.
Okay, is that clear to the clerk? What the intent there is, that that we would be adding to the variance that they can retain the existing driveway on the front in this case.
And can I say one more thing?
I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. I'm going to seek a seconder and then I'll come back to you.
Oh, you got one right there.
Okay, I got a seconder on the amendment, second by Councillor Pope. Councillor
So
Mary.
I also want to know tomorrow, I want staff to inform council tomorrow where that previous application was in the same neighborhood to make sure that we accommodate them in the same way. I want to understand that because we did give direction that night and now it's been part of an overall report back to council. And now we are varying this applicant's variance. I want to be able to vary the previous application, which would just be allowed to not decommission that front driveway. No, we didn't.
We didn't.
No, we didn't. We asked staff to
report
do
back.
that and to report back, and we still are waiting. So I want to understand where we are in the process of that previous application and tell those owners they do not have to decommission that driveway. They can just leave it the way it is. And whatever we need to do to fix that, let's do that.
That's
I
my,
like this pragmatic common sense council that just wants to do stuff because it makes sense.
that was my recollection of the
Excellent.
discussion we
Thank
had
you.
before as well. That
Thank
matter's
you.
been seconded by Councillor Pope. Councillor Pope, do you have additional comments? Okay. is
And
there-
if there's any other applications like this, staff, they've
heard
got
that-
it.
That the
Good.
council wants to review it, but I
Excellent.
still want to have the broader discussion with council because what the net result is, when you have a lane, you're now going to have a mix. Some houses will have garages and driveways out front. Some will have a nice big open lawn and walkway, and they'll have public street parking in front of them. The ones with the driveways will not have public street parking in front of them. And so we're not actually doing, I think, the best of both worlds. The best of both worlds is either everybody has their own off-street parking and about the same amount, or they have all laneway access parking. I just think from the block face, it looked better, but and
It doesn't need
it's actually
to,
the defining difference between the city and the district when the communities were originally.
and that's
made.
okay to be
That's okay.
different. But can I just point out that there is this conundrum in the district that on the one hand, we don't want cars on the street. We want them off. And on the other hand, we're taking driveways off of properties to allow cars to park on the street. We have to kind of get together and look at this logically. And not every single house on that road is going to be putting in a coach house and, want to maintain their driveway or whatever.
Okay.
It's okay to be different all over the place. We don't have to be, all the same everywhere.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's been seconded. Councillor Pope, your comments on the matter? Any further comments? You're good. Councillor Ma, your comments are on the amendment? Okay, all right. I'm going to call a question on the amendment to the variance permit. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. And now I'm going to call a question on the now amended variance permit. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Thank you very much. Staff, I think you've heard the direction the council wants to have another discussion about what this impact would be in the community going forward on other properties, and also in hindsight, looking at the properties that seem to have been caught up in it that maybe they've disengaged from their redevelopment because they weren't happy with that requirement, which I know happened. The specific case was the laneway didn't actually go through the block. The laneway stopped partway through the block, and the people that were caught with only a partial laneway were being forced to remove their front entrance as well. And but we'll go back and address it. You have your permit issued as it is, and it sounds like. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, moving along. Items 8.3 and 8.4 were passed in consent as well as 8.7. So we're going to return to the regular list here. We have items 8.5 and 8.6. So item 8.5 is the electric cargo utility bike lending program update. And do we have a comment from staff first?
Sure, Your Worship. Mr. James can actually provide some opening comments.
Thank you, Worship. This report is a response to Councillor Back's motion that was brought forward earlier in the year that proposed directed staff to investigate the feasibility of an electric cargo and utility bike lending program that could be facilitated through the Northang district libraries. And we brought forward a recommendation here today after doing a feasibility study on that proposed motion. And the recommendation is that council direct staff to fund electric cargo and utility bike lending program that is facilitated by a third-party vendor for a total net cost of $50,000 with funding from the Transportation and Mobility Reserve. So I'm Mr. James, and Mr. Joyce and I are here to answer any questions about the report as it has been presented.
Through your worship, if I could just add one more other point. We are looking at partnering with the city of North Van on this, and that would be the third party provider as well. So that's the route they're taking, which is also consistent with the staff recommendation tonight.
I think I'm acting mayor all of a sudden.
You are. You are.
So assist acting Mayor Pope. So far in the speakers queue, there's Councillor Back is the only one that's raised their hand.
I didn't actually.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. Thank you very much, Mr. James, and to everyone on staff involved in reporting back on my report that I brought forward only a couple of months ago. I'm impressed how quickly you were able to do the research and come back with a recommendation. I'm not going to lie, I definitely feel some disappointment. I did think that we could hopefully get this up and running this summer, and I hope that it would be run through our library staff. But we knew all along there was going to be the potential to be an issue or two to work around. And I think the liability piece being one of the biggest issues. And so here we are today with this recommendation. I think I will be supporting this, of course, because it's going to achieve really what my initial goals were in bringing the motion forward initially, and that is to get more people trying electric cargo bikes and seeing how they could fit into their life and how they could replace car trips and carry cargo and carry people. And I think this will do this in a different way. The other positive, I think, is that if we can do this somehow in conjunction with the city of North Van, that's a positive as well. They've been very, proactive in how they address active transportation. And I think for us to be partnering with them, it would be a positive. I'd hope that we could, as I said, run it through the libraries, because I want this to be barrier-free access to anybody that has a library card that wants to try one of these. And it sounds like this will still be the case, even with a third-party vendor running the program. So I guess a question to staff would be, do we have any examples of other programs like this where this type of third-party vendor is running a program like this? Is there anything that you can?
Through your worship, thank you, Councillor Back. Staff have worked closely with the North Vancouver District Library team in all our discussions about introducing this innovative program to library members and district residents. Our main goal was to develop a recommendation that really mitigated the risks to the district, but we still want to develop a program that is delivered in conjunction with the district library and does not exclude it. And I just want to make that clear. Numerous program functions can be designed and stipulated in an RFP, and we would still like to have the library as an implicit member in delivering this program. Just to answer your question further on, in the Appendix A to this, there are other examples of different programs that have been run throughout North America. And a couple of those are libraries that have done it in conjunction with third-party vendors. On the North Shore specifically, there are already established e-bike share programs, as you all know. And there have been like very sort of high-level discussions with those vendors to whether or not they would be capable of delivering such a program. And they have showed us that they may be interested, but those finer details will be determined in the RFP process.
Thank you for that. And there's other examples of third-party vendors that the libraries work with that, you know, still provide access to anyone with a library card. So I am hopeful that this will work out. I know one of the other parts of the initial recommendation in the report that I brought forward was to have one of the bikes be for library use as well. But maybe that is something that the libraries could look at doing in-house in terms of having their own cargo bike just for library use to be out in the community and be the book bike type thing. But as far as this recommendation, I am very supportive, and again want to thank staff for the quick turnaround in bringing this forward.
Apologies for having to step away, but I heard that you're the mover of the motion. Did we get a seconder for the motion? Councillor Ma, your comments?
Thank you. Similar to Councillor Back, this has played out a little differently than we initially envisioned. But still, thank you for the report. It's very detailed. Being council's appointee to the library board, I had hoped that the library could play a role in this pilot because I think the library is such a central part to the community, and we are trying to encourage people to, try bikes and find alternate means of transportation. On that note, I am encouraged by the uptake to the recent provincial e-bike rebate program. It's phenomenal. I think e-bikes are going to be a game changer, and I think e-cargo bikes are a natural evolution of that. So I will support this the staff's recommendation. So thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers on the motion?
Your worship, can I just have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Joyce.
Through your worship, on both the councillors' comments, I could see a day when we sunset the program with a third party and it reverts back to the library to take it on at that point in time. So when we looked at it, this is sort of the heavy lifting part. There's some liability legal issues. The costing, frankly, wasn't all that much difference by the time we contract with a library or a bike repair store and do some of the communication with the program. So the costing was somewhat similar. But if we get this up like we've done with the Lime program, then I could see it really finding a home with the library going forward.
Councillor Neary,
I'll help.
you got to hit your button.
I did hit my button. I hit it off now.
All right.
So I don't forget, so you don't think I want to talk again. No, I think it's good. The program has been successful with the Lime e-bike program, very successful. And I think I'm happy that we're partnering with the city of North Van. I think that makes sense. We did the same thing with Lime and that worked well. So I think these kinds of things, because, people that are riding cargo bikes or electric bikes or anything else don't know borders. And I know that with the Lime bike program, it did end at a certain place. Like I couldn't ride it into the Seymour, for instance, because it stopped at the river. And I think they've extended that, but it would be, I think what council would be interested in having a little briefing on the Lime bike program and where we've been, how many times it's been, how successful has it been? Let's look at that on the eve of looking at a different model as well with a cargo bike.
Okay, thank you very much. My comments on the matter, I'm not going to be supportive of this pilot. I don't think it's the right role for the municipality to take on the risk and liability of both carrying and maintaining this and also people untrained using these vehicles in the community and not taking the risk on themselves necessarily. I think $50,000 for a 12-month pilot is a tremendous amount of money when you consider the cost of the bikes. And so I'm not going to be supportive of that. Any other speakers on the matter? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion's approved with me opposed. Okay. The next item up for discussion is item 8.6. And so this is the Make Housing Central pledge. And opening comments from Ms. Appa, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. On January 9th of this year, Council directed staff to report back on how to implement the Make Housing Central pledge. At that time, Council passed a resolution to support it. The Make Housing Central pledge, or Make Housing Central, is a partnership between 3 different organizations: the BC Nonprofit Housing Association, the Aboriginal Housing Management Association, and the Cooperative Housing Federation of BC. This is a partnership that's really focused on advocating for more affordable, secure affordable housing. So the report on the agenda today provides some details on each of the 5 commitments. I'll just give a couple of examples of some of the current and future work that the district is doing and can do to help advance the commitments. Commitment number 2 is all about streamlining and fast tracking rental and affordable rental housing. The district already does prioritize social and supportive housing developments, but we know that there are more improvements to process that we want to look at. Staff are doing this through the Development Approvals Process Review, or DAPR for short, which includes looking at short-term actions and a more in-depth review of all of our permitting processes through this year and into next year. Commitment number 4 relates to using public land for nonprofit and co-op housing. The district is also proactive here and provides long-term leases for social and supportive housing on its land. Encouraging a mix of tenures, co-op housing could be one of those, is also something that's called out in our official community plan and is something the district could explore with community partners. Local governments do play an important role in supporting affordable housing in their communities. There are many areas of work that the district is doing and can do. A couple other examples: collaborating with our First Nations, waiving development cost charges. The recommendation is to receive this report for information. I'm available to answer questions about broader housing initiatives, as is Mr. Milburn, and Yan Zhang, the manager of development planning, is here to answer some process and implementation questions should you have some. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll do Councillor Hanson, your hands up first. Will you be moving a motion?
I'll move receipt.
Okay. Okay, is there a seconder for receipt? Second by Councillor Back. Okay, and commentary, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much. I was one of those councillors referred to in the report who signed the Make Housing Central pledge, which I take to be a commitment around the urgency of affordable, social, and supportive housing. Some comments, and thank you for all that you've done to this point. Thank you for the report. With respect to the approvals process going forward, I do look forward to a report in regards to further streamlining approvals for affordable, social, and supportive housing. And I think it's extremely important that this category of housing be dealt with quickly with respect to the bureaucratic phases, the approval process. I also look forward to a further report with respect to DCCs, and I would support the automatic waiver of DCCs in the case of social, affordable, and supportive housing. With respect to district land, I thank you for your report. I noticed that the district since 2011 has contributed over $208 million in direct and indirect support for over 20 housing units, creating 1,095 beds. And I wondered as I read that, how we stack up against other municipalities. I suspect we stack up very high. And I also wondered how this compares to the province on a per capita basis. So we can all be very proud of that. I support further contributions of district land towards social, affordable, and supportive housing. And of course, being extremely important that when we use an asset as valuable as district land, that we get real value in terms of affordability, which has come up before this council before. Would specifically support the use of district land to create co-ops. With respect to delegation of approvals for affordable housing, I do think we can streamline the process here with respect to the rezoning process. Council, of course, will retain jurisdiction to either support or not support any individual proposal with respect to housing in which the district is involved. So overall, thank you for the report. I think we have more work to do, and I certainly look forward to further work specifically to streamline the process so that social, affordable, and supportive housing gets through more quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Councillor Murray. Oh, sorry, who was the seconder on? Sorry, Councillor Back, further comments? Sorry.
Thank you very much to staff for reporting back on this. This came as a result of the report that I brought forward back in January, asking staff to respond to the Housing Central Pledge that the majority of us around this table signed during the last fall's election campaign. And it's really about using the tools that we have as a local government to create more affordable housing, and quite timely, particularly when we look at the position we find ourselves in today. I want to, commend staff for the work that we've done so far in so many of these areas, but clearly there's much more to do. Things like the development approval process review, I think, is extremely important. That seems to be really bogging down, slowing down the creation of any new housing. And I think that's something that, we do have a lot of control over. I think working with Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish on our next housing needs report is also would be a very positive step in the right direction. And I agree with many of the comments that Councillor Hanson said. It's never been more important to be focused on creating more housing that's affordable and attainable to the people that want to live in our community. So I thought I would take this just as an opportunity to address the top 10 list that we find ourselves on here in the District of North Vancouver. And really, I don't think that should be a surprise to any of us that we find ourselves on this list. For decades, we've been one of the slowest growing communities in Metro. Slowest population growth, despite being in part of one of the fastest growing regions in our country. People want to live in this community. They want to raise their families here. They want to work in their businesses here or start businesses here, to age in place here, but they need places to live. And for far too long, we've taken a very conservative approach to diversifying the type of housing and expanding on the supply of housing that's available. Even the targets within our OCP are very conservative, and they were set back in 2011. And I think we can all agree that the world has changed dramatically since that time. So I'm committed to working with the province, and I hope that that's the general sentiment of this council. I did hear some of your response, Mayor Little, to the media, and the response was that we need to keep pressing pause on most development until we see a new bridge or more lanes. And the reality is we can't wait. We need to build housing supply at the same time as we're advocating for transportation improvements, but we can't just assume that those improvements in infrastructure are going to come without being truly committed to building supply and growing our community. Otherwise, those investments, as we well know, will go to places like Surrey, where they're growing exponentially faster than we are. So I think while we wait for the details of this to roll out, I hope that we'll recognize that there's an opportunity that the province is giving us here. They're saying, we want to work with you. We want you to demonstrate a commitment to doubling down on your efforts to create a greater supply of housing. And we're prepared to work, we are prepared to work together collaboratively with the province. And that's certainly my position. But in terms of the Housing Central Pledge, thank you again, staff, for your work in just putting this report together and giving us a clear understanding of all of the ways that we are doing what we can to create more affordable housing. But again, I hope that we can really double down those efforts and do more. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Oh, there's so many things to talk about. So the housing pledge include affordable housing targets to meet the unique needs of Indigenous people and housing needs in the housing needs report. Streamline municipal permitting and rezoning process to fast track development on rental housing with a specific focus on affordable rental housing. Waive development cost charges for nonprofit and co-op housing developments. Contribute land to nonprofit and co-op housing developments for new affordable homes. Delegate approvals of nonprofit and co-op housing developments that are consistent with the official community plans to municipal staff. We do all of these things. We've been doing them for years. We work with obviously our First Nations and on how their developments and they for many years have been some of the most affordable units that have been built in this region because the issue of land has been removed. So we do all those things. And I'm happy to continue to doing them. I do love Councillor Hanson's question about what are the other municipalities doing in regards to what we've been doing. We've built some of the most, I mean, the district was always a leader on the North Shore in regards to social housing, and all you have to do is step into the Seymour. And there was a partnership between the CMHC and the provincial government and the municipalities. We partnered with nonprofits, Lions Housing Society, Kiwanis, the Rotary Club to build those kinds of facilities. And we did that for decades. And then the federal government pulled out of those programs. So this is where we've landed. The list, the list that we've all been talking about all week. And let's look at who's on that list. Vancouver and Port Moody, good heavens. Port Moody is just like a freight train going down the tracks, building and approving zoning right, left, and center every week. Hundreds and thousands of units are going into Port Moody, and they have infrastructure much like ours, and it's a very contentious issue in their community. And Vancouver has been building actively since Expo 86. When we welcomed the first invitation of the world to our region, and then the Winter Olympics came and we invited everybody again. And that's when guys like Sam Cooper wrote books on shadow flipping and one-bedroom condos being marketed offshore. And we were certainly building a plethora of one-bedroom units in our rezonings, and that was very evident. I had people regularly calling me going, wow, I'm going to these open houses for these new condos, and they're all gone. And I'm not their market. They don't want me because they had already been sold. So we are our own worst enemy in regards to this conundrum that we found ourselves in. There is data showing actually that there's an oversupply of housing in the city of Vancouver. And, people go, how can that be? Because we're in a housing crisis. How can there be an oversupply? It's what kind of housing are we building? That's what it boils down to. And you can even look at our data. We have built a majority of market strata units. 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, very few family units. And as we know, Kelly Bond, an activist in the community, a family unit is now up for $6,200 in the district of North Vancouver, bargain price for a family of 4, family of 5, or how many people you have to squeeze into 4 bedrooms to be able to afford $6,200. I'm astounded that there's not more people pounding on the desk saying, why aren't we protecting the affordable housing we've already got? Many years ago, a planner in the district of North Vancouver, Paula Huber, who went and worked for the city of Vancouver, said to a council meeting, I'll take my last two, the only affordable housing, Councillor Murray, is old housing. It's the only affordable housing that exists. So affordable market, like Emery, was market housing. It was market, it garnered those rents, those affordable rents, because it had arborite countertops. It had white fridges and ovens that were old. It was tired. I have to say, why is it that, people that are in the business of rental housing get to not look after their buildings? And then after 40 years, because we know the old housing that has to be torn down is only 40 years old. I'm astounded by that. I continue to be astounded. When we just went through heritage homes that are double that, and they looked absolutely beautiful because they were looked after. Why are we not requiring those business owners in that business of rental housing to look after those buildings? So we maintain that housing so we can cycle through, which is what we need to do. We need to cycle through the inventory to make it affordable. I think we've been gaslit.
I think we've been convinced that there's a housing crisis when is there really a penthouse housing crisis and a 3-bedroom condo on the 17th floor crisis? Is that the crisis? Because in the 2021 census in the District of North Vancouver, it showed that the district had permitted 4,600 units, occupancy permits, but our population only grew by 2,500. Why is that? Because people bought units and invested. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I have an investment property with my sister. You know, and many of us do. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when that takes precedence over keeping people that have lived in your community for 40 years and have run businesses and raised their children here, then I have a big problem with it. They should have been the priority, not the investment, not the selling offshore. Right? It should have been the people that lived here and worked here and were the thread of this community. And we failed those people. And we continue to fail them. We're displacing. You know, we've never worked better with the city of North Vancouver than we have in the last 8 years. And they're building a lot of density. And I think if we were one municipality, that's where the majority of the density would be because of the transportation and the C-bus and the commercial, right? The commerce in that middle of the North Shore. But there's a lot of blue fencing up right now in the city of North Vancouver. You can drive through blocks and it's all the old 3- and 4-story old buildings that are going to be replaced with rents that the people that live in there now will never, ever be able to afford. So yes, a pledge, certainly. We do this already. We are receiving this for information tonight. Thank you, staff, for providing the details and for Councillor Batt for bringing it forward when we talked about it previously. I just think we need a wholesale change in how we approach all of this. And we need to put the people down below first, because when you lift them up, everybody gets lifted up.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I've got Councillors Ma, Hanson, and Pope. Councillor Ma, your comments.
First, thank you to the staff for the detailed report. You know, although the district, we all know that we could do a better job in providing housing and building community. I'm glad to see that the district is moving ahead with each of the 5 elements of the pledge. I also think if the district signs off on the pledge, it does send a signal to the province, to the development community, and to the nonprofit sector that the district will be a partner in addressing the housing issues that our community faces. I also think it's important to remember that it's not really the district that builds anything. I think our role is to create the environment whereby developers and other partners will work with the district to build the forms of housing that the community wants and needs. I thank the staff for sending this report forward for information.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson. Okay. Councillor Pope, a first time. There you go.
Earth to Councillor Murray. Yes, we have a housing crisis. Well documented.
That's rude.
I'm sorry, but to say that there is no housing crisis, to deny it.
No, sorry, I'm not. I did not deny that there was a housing crisis. I denied that there was a penthouse housing crisis or a 3-bedroom condo crisis on the 17th floor. We have a social housing crisis, Councillor Pope. I absolutely agree with that. And I've been fighting that for 30 years.
All right, thank you. So the problem is that we have been identified as a district that has a very poor record of addressing that problem and addressing that crisis with affordable housing. And right now, that's why our children won't be able to afford to live here. Grandparents don't see their kids because they have to live in Mission and they don't have the time to come here. We have a labor shortage because workers can't afford to live here. And the provincial government's analytics have determined the obvious. And that is that we have a serious problem, especially with affordable housing. That's why the government is attempting to push us to make change so we can build more houses for more people faster. That makes perfect sense to me and many of the other cities that support the legislation, including the city of Vancouver. which has made significant progress in all kinds of housing in recent years. So I feel very strongly that we should be embracing the help being offered by the provincial government and collaborate with them in creative ways to finding solutions to this vexing problem. And as far as the Make Housing Central pledge goes, I think that this once again reinforces that we have to move forward on affordable housing. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And given that there has been discussion around this table tonight with respect to the provincial government's recent statements, I wish to state my position. I very much look forward to working with the provincial and any other level of government with respect to social, affordable, and supportive housing. We need massive investments. I look forward to those investments coming in part from the provincial government, and I look forward to working with them. We also need massive investments in transportation on the North Shore and other forms of infrastructure, including healthcare. Before we start importing a whole lot more people to the North Shore, perhaps one should visit the Lionsgate Emergency Ward in a busy time, maybe go there with their elderly mother and have them stay for a day or two in a hallway and see if your urge at that point is to bring a whole lot more people to the North Shore. So if the discussion is about market housing, more expensive strata, then I'm not in agreement with the provincial government mandating our requirement to approve that type of housing. If it's social, affordable, supportive, I'm all there. And if we're talking about improving transportation and other forms of provincial government sponsored infrastructure, I'm all there as well. That's my position.
Okay, thank you very much. So my comments on this matter, I didn't sign the pledge, and when it originally came around, I have an apprehension to signing pledges in it. I think that the expectation when you sign a pledge is that you're going to resign if you fail to achieve what you've pledged, and I don't think that's fair to the public necessarily. I think I'd rather people reserve the right to make an unbiased decision in future. And the reality is some of these goals are not fully fleshed out. I will say I mostly agree with what Councillor Murray had said in it, but goal number 5, we don't regularly do. We haven't in any case deferred the decision making to staff to decide on whether a project goes ahead or not. And so goal number 5, I have an absolute problem with. It has to be retained by council to make that decision. And I get that when we went through the official community plan process, we wanted to make the plan as flexible as we could. We didn't intend to build up to the maximum throughout. We wanted to make it so that, you know, we could do something bigger here and get more of a public benefit out of it, and maybe something a little more modest here. But we pushed it up to a flexible level. And what goal number 5 suggests is that if a not-for-profit walked in the door, they'd be able to go for the maximum of the OCP, and it would cause a couple of things. If you follow one of the other goals, they wouldn't have to contribute any development cost charges to the process, even though the province pays for that in other communities. They would automatically get the approval without having any discussion about the impact on the neighborhood around it, whether we have proper access and egress to the property, what the impact is going to be on the neighborhood. It would be pre-approval effectively for the project. And so I have a big problem with this. I think that we've had constructive relationship with the Squamish Nation and Tsleil-Waututh to affect goal number 1, and I think we can continue working on that. I know that with the Capilano Youth Student Housing as an example, the affordable housing is going to be first focused on Indigenous students, and we made that decision and supported that in the process. And so I think we're working constructively in that regard. But goal number 5, when added to the other goals, gives me a huge concern about this. The council still needs to be in control on making those decisions on the impact of the neighborhoods, because we're the ones that have to make the decisions on infrastructure, housing, transit, and all of the things that service those areas. And so fast tracking, pre-approving anything that's in the OCP, I don't agree with. The zoning, however, I would be okay with that if the zoning is on it. So as an example, we prescriptively zoned the entire Marine Drive corridor to a higher density. And I think that everybody coming forward with a development proposal in that neighborhood has a reasonable expectation that they're going to be able to build up to the rezoned level. And I would be supportive of us taking those prescriptive rezonings and fast tracking them through a process. But the OCP maximum, I don't think was ever intended to be carte blanche approved in every neighborhood. It was meant to create flexibility so we can have a variety in every neighborhood. And so I'm not supportive of that as an automatic approach. The other aspect of that goal number 5 piece is that the district tries to capture about 75% of the uplift of a development. And we do that to pump the money back into public benefits, to improve parks, to improve that neighborhood, to get affordable housing, to maybe expand a lane in the neighborhood, to maybe add a new park trail to it. But we take that 75% uplift and we reinvest it back into the community that we took it out of. This would mean we not only would not get the 75% uplift, because you can't negotiate that in when it goes because it's pre-approved to the OCP level, and we would have to be contributing the DCC taxes and contributions off of the tax levy. Other communities get compensated for those pieces. I don't know why we would sell the district short. So I did not support the pledge in the first place, and I still have problems with it. I have no problem with passing receipt of the information report before us here tonight, but I just wanted to get those comments out there about some of the concerns I have about abrogating our duties to this pledge rather than actually sitting down and doing the hard work of deciding what's appropriate in that spot, what's appropriate in that spot. So I'll be supportive of receipt, but I do not support some of the details of the pledge.
Could we ask staff to provide us with an inventory of the North Shore of what's available? Because again, there's no boundaries. So what's available in the district of North or West Vancouver in regards to social and co-op housing, that kind of housing, what's in the city, just so we have a better idea.
I think that as we go through the process with the provincial government, I think it's fair for us to see how we stack up against other municipalities in the process. I think Mr. Milburn is aware of telling that story as well of what we have been able to achieve. And if we are able to prepare that into a report back to the council, or I think that would be constructive. Mr. Milburn?
Yes, Your Worship. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but other communities don't typically publish the amount of data that we provide. So it's difficult often to glean it from communities, but we can put this request to BC Housing and CMHC with respect to the provision of the affordable units that they've funded within those various areas to provide a comparator for communities of a similar size and so on. So we certainly can provide that information back to council as we go forward with these housing discussions.
And maybe not just like the recent ones, but like the historical ones, because a lot of them still exist, like Tiddly Cove and our Lions and Seymour. Like, what is our total inventory in the municipality versus our North Shore partners?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, we do have inventory data with respect to the district lands, and we can provide that to council.
Councillor Hanson, I still have you on the list. Was that from before? Okay, are there any other speakers to this item? I think I said sporkers. Any other speakers? I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, council, we have completed the regular business of the evening. We do still have an opportunity to have some reports if members of council would like to make reports. Councillor Hanson, you have a report?
I just wanted to remind all members of council that the Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Day event is taking place this Sunday, the 11th. We haven't held one since 2019, where a lot of work has been put into that event by our local community, and it's going to be a real fun time, and I hope to see you all there. The parade starts at 10:45 at the beginning at the top of Berkeley and Hyannis, and I look forward to seeing you all there.
Always a lot of fun. Are they doing the kids bike parade? So all the kids in the neighborhood are to decorate their bikes for it. I think they lead off with that every year, so that's fantastic. Any other reports? I think I should probably make a report. I was very sad to hear about the unfortunate loss of person at Rice Lake the other day. We obviously want everybody who goes out to have fun in our community and recreation to be able to go home safely at the end of the day. I do know that our crews did have to reach a person in an island within the lake. And so there was a lot of effort made to go and resuscitate the individual. Unfortunately, the person has passed. I don't think the family has decided to release the name, so I just wanted to pass it on anonymously that our condolences go to the family for their loss. It's very tragic when you go to just have some fun and something like this happens. So unfortunately, I had to share that as a report today. Councillor Murray and Councillor Back. Councillor Murray, you have a report?
Just reporting that there were several of us of council that traveled back to Toronto last week in regards to the conference with the FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Councillor Pope and Councillor Ma were along, and Councillor Back and myself had been to previous ones. And, you know, it's a way for us to sort of connect with our counterparts across this land. It is, you know, I think it's becoming more evident that the bigger cities and even the suburbs around the bigger cities are so very different from those small towns and, you know, that are very spread apart in the provinces. And, you know, maybe things that we have done 20 years ago, they're just starting. And so I think that was quite evident. And there was a lot of sort of discussion about, you know, how we have such big issues compared to some of these small towns. But I think there was about 40 members of Metro Vancouver that attended, different municipalities. It might have been a little bit more. And so interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, did you have another one? Councillor Back? Oh, Councillor Back.
Thank you. Thanks, Your Worship. Councillor Murray covered the update. I was at the FCM convention as well, and similar kind of takeaway in that I think one of the most valuable aspects of those types of conferences is the connections you make individually with people, you know, not necessarily in the formal workshop settings. And I certainly had a number of good conversations about people and brought home a list of ideas of things that I would like to bring forward. I attended a couple of different study tours. One ended up being a private tour of the Toronto Archives, which I thought was really interesting given that I'm on the Museum and Archives Commission, and came away with some different ideas for how we could be bringing up the level of, you know, focus or attention for archives in the community. And I also attended a session on climate actions. And to Councillor Murray's kind of point, a number of the items that were discussed, I would say the majority of them we're already doing. And so it kind of made me feel proud to be representing the district and the fact that we are leaders in that particular area. But yeah, overall, it was a great week, and great to be able to learn more about how to tackle some of these challenges that so many of our communities face.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Hanson, did I miss you, or that was from earlier? Okay, Councillor Ma.
Thank you. Just to quickly report, I attended two kind of community-based events the past week and weekend. On Saturday, I was at the C-SPAN Family Day event. I was invited by my good friends who work there. Mm-hmm. It really was a real eye-opener for me to kind of see the size of their operation, the amount of people that come to the North Shore to work. But I also met people that live in the North Shore that work there. I talked to a few of their senior executive about some of their challenges that they have, and it's not a surprise. You know, finding employees, you know, having them live on the North Shore and trying to deal with transportation. They rent a lot of parking spots or lots for their staff to get to work. My good friend has got a job there to manage some of their internal bus fleet to get their staff around, and you know that's a real big challenge for them. And then I was at the Kenneth Gordon Maplewood School open house last week, and I didn't really know much about the school, so I've learned a lot about, you know, how they meet the needs of kids that and students that don't. They have different needs than the traditional school. So I was very glad to see that we have resources on the North Shore to meet the needs of the broader community and some of the different groups, such as the one that made the presentation this morning. I mean, earlier tonight. It's been a long day, but yes. So I'm very glad to see that the district has those groups here to provide needs for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. I've got a couple more reports. It's been a few weeks since we had a regular council meeting, so I did want to mention that last week we had the annual general meeting for the Chamber of Commerce Board, and I got to participate in the swearing in of the new board members. And it looks like they're going to have a fantastic board, and I look forward to a bunch of initiatives to support our businesses coming out of that group. I also had the honor of, but a sad story of being there for the retirement of my friend Annie Wardell, our chief financial officer. We were able to get lunch together and reminisce over the years with the District of North Vancouver. He'll be greatly missed within our organization. He obviously provided incredibly professional support for us locally, but he was also a regional leader. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, when he was chairing RFAC, the Regional Finance Advisory Committee, when he was heading up a bunch of initiatives with asset management, and I think he's actually still going to be volunteering with Asset Management BC, trying to provide best practices to all municipalities in the province. And so I wished him well on our behalf. We did do a tour with the Metro Vancouver Water Committee, where we went up to the water filtration plant and went through that incredible operation that they have there. It's got several other levels of filtration, but obviously ozonation does sort of the most important last step to make sure that our water is clear. It's always fun because they're so proud of the water. You go into the meeting room and they've got water there and say, well, try the water. What do you think of the taste of the water, right? Like they're just, they're water nerds. I love it. And we had a great discussion about that facility and what it does for 50% of the water supply for Metro Vancouver, really, between the two Capilano Reservoir and the Seymour Reservoir. I also, during that time, visited Ottawa with TransLink. There was a campaign done with a number of mayors to go and make sure that our transit and public transit investment is first and foremost in front of the correct people in Ottawa. One of the key goals that I was sort of responsible for was we have a funding program called ISIP that was supposed to cover the 10-year period up to 2026, and it's a large public permanent transit investment program. And TransLink had been able to complete its projects ahead of time, whereas the vast majority of the other regional transit providers are really lagging behind in being able to get their projects off the ground and get them underway. The good thing is we've been able to get our projects forward. The challenge is the next 10-year plan for investment doesn't start till 2026. And so we're at a spot now where without that funding, we're going to be sitting on our hands for 3 years while we face all of this growth facing the Lower Mainland. And so we went with a very strong message back to the federal government saying that you have to let us move that start date forward, because we don't want to sit on our hands for the next number of years. We want to be able to deliver bus rapid transit in our community, both the Surrey Langley SkyTrain station, the UBC extension, the gondola, plus also the vast majority of the actual capacity increase, which is actually just buses throughout the region, both electrifying our buses and making sure that we have the right equipment to support and serve our communities. And so we gave that message. I think what's probably going to have to happen is you'll probably have to have a smaller group of people go back in September when the federal government is having their final discussions about supply bill and financing, and see if they'll let us move that date forward, because otherwise we're going to be behind on our ambitious targets that we have for improving transit in the Lower Mainland. So we may have to revisit that. The last report I wanted to mention is Council of Councils is coming up for our council members. And so that's an opportunity for all of the Metro Vancouver mayors and councils to get together and get an update from all of the departments within Metro Vancouver. And I would highly recommend that everybody attend this. I've attended a number of them in the past. For particularly Councillor Murray and myself, who sit on a number of boards or the key main board, we already get a lot of the updates that are going on in these different departments. This is a great opportunity to learn about all the departments, ask your questions, find out about it. Unfortunately, it's in Langley this year, so it's a bit of a commute on the Saturday. Maybe we were, when it was in Burnaby, it was a little bit easier. But I still think it's a valuable opportunity for people to ask the questions that, if you're not on the committees, you don't automatically get an opportunity to ask those questions. So I'd highly recommend you attend the Council of Councils coming up shortly. At that, I don't see any other speakers. So I will accept adjournment from Councillor Murray. Again, on behalf of the council, I want to thank the members of the public for staying with us through the meeting and bringing their concerns forward today. I want to thank the staff for preparing the reports for council's consideration. And again, thank you all for making the tough decisions tonight. I appreciate it. Everybody have a fantastic evening. Good night.